Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Today, I am joined by Staff Sergeant Joey Jones. Many of you know him from Fox News, but we're going to be talking about his upcoming book, Beyond the Badge, Answering the Call to Serve on America's Home Front. And the book officially releases on June 17th. Joey, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for the interest. I really appreciate it. This book is it's exciting for me, and hopefully it's enlightening for a lot of other folks. So thanks for letting me talk about it.
It really, I'm telling you, that's what I was saying before we got on. It really is for me because here in Michigan, we've had a lot of situations where police have been under attack. And I liked how you started the book with your story about Colin Kaepernick, because I was reading that and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is so cool. They actually spoke and I'm going to hear something really good. And then you're like, no, he turned out to be a total jerk. So it just reinforced what we all thought.
Yeah, it's, sometimes I feel like I look back and it's like, man, it's a little bit Forrest Gump, like in my life, where I just, wrong place, wrong time, or connecting with someone while something's going on. And with the whole Colin Kaepernick thing, my buddy Nate Boyer connected us, and it did feel very genuine. Nate was an Army Ranger, and after that, he played for the Seattle Seahawks for a preseason, not in the regular season. But he was at 33 years old, so he gained fame just by making an NFL roster as a 34-year-old rookie. And so Nate's a very open and honest guy. He's not necessarily politically liberal, conservative. He just likes people. And he tried to bridge a gap and make something good out of the kneeling, and Colin kind of spit in our face. And I brought that example up, not necessarily to talk bad about Colin, but to say, hey, listen, I'm not coming from this one-sided. I'm just saying there's really only one side.
No, it's so interesting because as I was reading that, I think about comparing that to the political world, which you're obviously a big part of as well. And we talk about that all the time as we look at this next gubernatorial race in Michigan and what the battles are on the ground here, which are the battles in many states, and education and things that you would think as parents we would all come together on. And I was just talking the other day, I'm like, there is a part of me that thinks on certain issues we could sit down with the other side. But I read this and I was like, maybe I am being naive about that.
I talk about in that intro, since you brought it up, which is this book, unlike my last book, I probably spent more time on what the guys and gal had to say and making sure their words were accurate and their anecdotes made sense than I spent on my own take, because I didn't feel like my take was as necessary as making sure they were presented. But in the intro, one of the few places I get to just pontificate in this book, I talk about how there are two different narratives that happen. This idea of defund the police, which is what politicians said, and then ACAB, ACAB, all cops are bad, or really what a lot of people are saying, all cops are bastards. And in doing my research and writing the book, what I learned is that it was the exact same movement. It's just politicians in their spineless way said, oh, we're not going to say all cops are bastards. We're going to say defund the police. We're going to kind of repackage this. So it became the politically correct way of saying all cops are bad or all cops are bastards. They were embracing that sentiment. And you look no further than the riots in 2020. And every time a police officer had to use their weapon in the line of duty, the politicians that would come out and call him a murderer because the person they shot was a person of color. And so what you learn is that politicians are what they are. They, or at least some, they latch on to the worst of us that we get excited and passionate about. And they use that to manipulate our emotions or allow us to become the worst versions of ourselves. And that's what happened in this movement, this idea that police officers are somehow terrible people. It's, if I can turn that into your enemy, then you're not looking at me anymore. And that's really what it became.
And it's so personal because that movement was, and I think it still exists, that movement is kind of, they paint police as this, as not people, as a unit in and of itself. But this book brings you to the actual life and the day in and day out of these people so that you can humanize what these jobs are. And just last week, I actually had the honor of presenting a couple of Police Officer of the Year awards here in the state of Michigan. And you get to read their story. There's a significant moment in the year that something happens, and you get to read their story aloud to the entire group and then present them the award. So I had two different stories with multiple officers involved. And the stories are so powerful And when I read them, I think to myself, I couldn't do this. I couldn't have run into this burning building. And the one was a police officer with no gear, not trained as a firefighter, who ran into a burning building and brings a child out. But in the process, 2 other children don't make it out. And you take that home. And there are stories like that in this book that I think that is what people need to read, because the one thing that I came out of this award ceremony with from the director of the Police Officers Association was, our police officers still feel abandoned.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. When you read this book, number one, it's not all police officers. It starts with 2 firemen that are really close to me, my brother-in-law, and then a guy that I've known since I was 3 years old. He's like an uncle to me. And they happen to work at the same department together. That's not why the 3 of us know each other. It's just I come from a small town. But in those first 2 chapters, you have my friend Clay Hedrick, who is country is a turnip green. Hopefully that translates in Michigan. You understand what that means? Really country, really talks with a thick accent, didn't go to college, but incredibly smart guy. And then my brother-in-law, Keith, is kind of the opposite of that from this area. His dad's well-educated. He's well-educated, went to the University of Georgia, got a business degree, came back and told his dad that's a, self-made millionaire, hey, I appreciate the education, but I'm going to go be a fireman. And the point there is that these are 2 people. One person might see it as an opportunity in life. The other one sees it as a mission in life, but they kind of come together to do the same thing for a period of time. And they come from very different places. They're very different experiences in the same place. And I really wanted that juxtaposition to shine. And what happened was, when you write a book like this and you interview people, what you want to happen isn't necessarily what happens. And what really shined was how they went through this experience of, my brother-in-law talks about going into a burning house at a young age, early on in a fire department, trying to save 2 kids, couldn't find them. They had crawled up and under a pile of stuffed animals to hide. Didn't find them. They perished. And then Clay talks about very first time on incident, very first time, young kid is killed in a car crash and having to see the parents. And what you learn is it doesn't matter where you come from or what your experiences are, that raw human emotion is there. And some people can deal with it and some people can't. And there are 2 people that can. I don't know that I could. I mean, from the time I had my daughter on, reading the news on Fox and Friends and learning about a little kid that was injured or mistreated, just hit so much harder. And so to know that we have people out there that can go do this and then come back to their own kids, take them to school through that same intersection that they just saw a kid die in, and go home at night and give their family a smile and a happy day. Man, it's, we use the term hero a lot and superhero. And it's like, I feel like that's a super ability. It's not something I know that I could do. And to know that 2 people really close to me in my life do it every day. I've known these men for 20, 30 years. I didn't know these stories. And to know that you don't have to go to LA or New York or Houston or Detroit to find these stories. It's not Chicago Fire. It's Dalton, Georgia Fire Department. And here are 2 guys that have these stories. It's a common denominator. It's a thread that sews every community in this country together.
And that these tragedies are happening all the time, and we don't know, but they pile up. I mean, I think it was your friend Clay who said that when he saw the child, after he saw the child, he hit by a truck, he felt like, I don't know if I can do this job. And almost the sense that I got from that moment was there was a little bit of shame, and he went to his boss and was like, I just don't know if I can do this. And that was so human. There was so much vulnerability in the book, which I thought was beautiful, because it's the stuff we don't get to see. We see first responders and we think, just what you said, I don't think I could do that. There's something special about them. And I do think there's something special. And sometimes because of that, we think, oh, they're all right because they deal with it differently. But the vulnerability of him going back and calling his wife and saying, I just need to hear the kids' voices. I was in tears when I read that, because I thought, this is just one day.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk myself into a circle here, but you bring up a great point, which is I sit here and say it's almost this superhero ability. The truth is they don't have the ability to do it any more than you or I. They just believe that their mission is more important than their own peace of mind. if there's anything superhuman about them, it's that it affects them just the same. Some people obviously get affected worse than others, things like that, but it's not that they're unaffected. It's that they believe that that job and the service they provide and the lives they do save and the people they console. And there's a game warden who was search and rescue, is on the dive team. He believed in his story that it was worth hypothermia to retrieve a body of a young girl for her mother before, I think it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, before the next major holiday, because his chief had made her a promise, we're going to find your daughter before the new year, whatever it was. And so he goes and he dives to find this girl, and he finally does. And as he does, they get him on shore and he blacks out and he wakes up in the hospital. So it's like, it's the kind of thing that, you know, he was willing to risk his own life, not to save a life, but to bring closure. And it's like this idea that they're not infallible. They can die in cold water just like you and I can. They can have the mental and emotional trauma just like you and I can. They just believe it's worth it, that the sacrifice is worth it, that the risk is worth it. And if there's anything special, I think the first chapter is ordinary guy in extraordinary circumstance. And man, that just really ties a bow on all of it, because that's who these people are.
And their families as well. I think that's also key, is that his wife heard in his voice when he called, there's something different. I'll just sit here in silence with him on the phone. And to me, that was so powerful. And then Sheriff Lamb was also a similar story of his family understanding. I mean, my goodness, when I read about him working 2 jobs, he's working as a police officer and I think pest control too. And he is, I mean, you are away from your family so much. And his wife, God bless her, because I don't know that I looked at even that and I'm like, would I be that understanding? He's like, don't come to me with the minuscule things, because I'm like, there are times when I'm like, and then they did this and they did this, you know, as a mom, you just like, you want to unload and you want someone else, you want dad to come in and hear the horrible things of the day. But this understanding of what he is doing is a mission, and it is bigger than those small moments of so-and-so poked the other kid's eye, you know, like all the things that happen during the day. This is so much bigger.
Yeah, Mark Lamb's story is really unique. I mean, he's now essentially, especially on the right, a famous law enforcement figure because he understood the PR side of being a sheriff. What he really gets into that I love, and I think is a great educational opportunity, is like the constitutionality of a sheriff and how a sheriff has to juggle that responsibility of enacting laws that he believes are unconstitutional and the will of the people he serves. But by becoming this kind of forward-facing sheriff, someone that has social media, then he becomes accessible to his community. So it's a little bit of vulnerability in a sense, because you can't just say, oh, I didn't know about that, or I didn't hear you, because now you can go on my social media page and tell me about your grievance. And so it really is, it's so much more work to do that. It's not about self-aggrandization. It's about making sure everyone in your community knows you are accessible to them. And when you do that, then you have to hear all the things that they want to change. And instead of him being overwhelmed by that or coming up with excuses, he listened. And wow, you know, what a person, an elected official that listens. And so every person in the book, whether it's the Border Patrol Search and Rescue, game warden, fireman, police officer, SWAT, bomb squad, every person in the book has a story or two of trauma, of experiencing something that you hope nobody ever has to experience. And the anecdote I use is, you know, the worst day in our lives, like in the book when I talk about losing my dad, the worst day in our lives is just another day on the job for them. It's just another day. But then also every person in the book, without prompt, offers some sort of wisdom or insight or actionable idea that has helped them and may help the person reading the book to get through that trauma or that difficult time or that difficult job, those difficult hours. And I think it's really unique, or not unique, but really amazing that this really is something that we don't think about a lot. It's so common among them. It's this unique idea that I guess the best way to explain it is, as a veteran for more than 20 years, I've watched my country have this conversation and lead to programs and you know, everything from a free meal at Applebee's on Veterans Day to the Department of Veterans Affairs looking at psychedelics to treat mental health. Like we've gone that far with our appreciation and understanding for the military, what they go through and what they may need as far as mental health. And then we look at our first responders who never come home from war because they go to their battlefield every day, and we have nothing. We don't acknowledge it. We don't program for it. Very few charitable organizations and efforts exist. So how do they do it? They do it at the grassroots level. They do it in the fire hall, at the precinct, on the SWAT team, having conversations with each other, because there's still a stigma in their community. You're going to take me off the street if I go talk to we called it wizard. I don't know what each of them calls it, but the psychologist. Like, are you not going to let me carry a gun now? And it's a legitimate concern. Like, I feel sane, but these things bother me. And if I just talk to you about these things, are you going to take my ability to do my job away? And so they just talk to each other. They have conversations. Clay Hedrick gets into it in the first books. Like he said, listen, what helped me more than anything was talking to somebody else about what they had going on. And it's this idea that you're talking about humbling. It makes me never want to complain as a veteran again, which I try not to anyway. We probably have it better than any group of veterans in this world. And we're living beside a fireman or a police officer that has seen equally as traumatic things and has none of the resources available we have. We're saying we should have more. Like, it was a very, very introspective for me in writing this book.
We've got more coming up with Joey Jones, but first I want to talk to you about my partners at Ease Health. Great news. President Trump's executive order slashing the cost of prescription drugs is going after the price gouging for drugs like insulin with Obamacare. You've heard me on this show introduce to you our healthcare partner, Ease for Everyone, which is a solution to what President Trump is fighting for today and every day. Listen to these simple facts. With Ease for Everyone and a monthly cost as low as $262, you get over 400 prescription drugs for free. Not lower costs, but no cost, $0, plus huge savings on many other brands. You actually get to keep your doctor, thanks for nothing, Obama. You get free unlimited virtual primary care visits, unlimited urgent care with a $30 copay, and a generous cashback reimbursement for surgeries and hospital stays, including ICU visits, emergency room visits, and ambulance transportation and doctor's visits. And that's at $262 a month. You keep your doctor and over 400 prescription drugs for free. Visit easeforeveryone.com/tutor and join today. That's easeforeveryone.com/tutor. Now stay tuned. We've got more with Joey Jones after this. We don't think about it as going to war every day, but they really are going into battle every single day. And it's interesting because, like I said, when I was at the Police Officers Association event last week, the director was saying to me, since 23, 24, 20 into 25 now, they are seeing more attacks on police officers than they've ever seen. It's like an increase of 75% that they are seeing people fight back and fight the cops. And I said, why do you think that is? And he said, I think that because they've seen all of these people come in illegally and get away with what they're doing, they feel empowered to go after these guys. And he said, to be honest, Tudor, those are only the ones we know about, because he's like, guys aren't coming back to the office and saying, hey, I got my butt kicked today. He's like, we don't really tell people that. And I thought that is also something that you're taking home with you. You are at war every single day.
That was the picture I tried to paint, the picture that was painted for me, not in direct words, because none of these guys, and Caitlin, the female in the book, none of them would ever sit around and complain. Or it's so antithetical to who they are. Number one, they look at guys like us. I mean, obviously I've got the prosthetic legs, but I know the majority of people in this book because I do these hunts where I take a group of my veteran friends and a group of first responders, and we go on a hunt and we sit around a campfire and talk. And that's what really inspired this book. And so, not to, I guess, lose my train of thought there for a minute, because I'm thinking about hunting for a second. You see the duck over my head here. But the inspiration of this book came from this idea that here's my brother-in-law sitting beside me. I've known him for 30 years. Literally, we're family now. He grew up 2 miles down the road from me. Technically different communities, but same area. I know where he works. I know the road that he got on to go to work every day, because that's the one I took to high school every day. And to hear him tell these stories of what he's experienced. And that was the first time it clicked in my head that, his battlefield, where he goes to war to save somebody's life, is the most safe place in the world to me. You can pluck me out of Hawaii, Japan, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, wherever I was at. And they said, put you somewhere that you feel safe. Anywhere in Dalton, Georgia, that's where I'm from. I know where I'm at. And to think that the same place that is the safest place in the world for me is where he sees the worst happen to us and sees us do the worst to ourselves. That just really kind of rocked my world a little bit. And what it showed me was the sense of entitlement we walk around with as Americans. We don't worry about, if I have a car wreck, somebody's going to be there. If my kid is injured, somebody's going to be there. If I drop my kid off at school, there's an RSO or a school resource officer, an SRO there that's going to take care of my kid. We believe that. And this idea that these people exist in our communities, we go to church with them, we see them at the supermarket, we get mad at them in an intersection because they cut us off in their civilian car. And it's like, they're the people we interact with, positive and negative, all day. And they're also the same people that we just wake up every morning believing will save our lives and save our families' lives and save our house and save our business.
We'll run into a burning building. I mean, that to me is, like you were saying earlier, I don't know if I could do it. I mean, I think in that moment, there's probably adrenaline if you are an in the moment hero, but this is their life every day. Every day it's a choice to get up and say, I will run into a burning building. That's my job. If it happens, I'm here. And I think that, again, I will say, I think the thing that struck me in this book is the piling up of these stories, because you talked about losing your dad. And then I think it was just a few days later when you saw the person from the fire department who looked at you and said, you know, what happened? It was still with him. That story that's just another file in the file cabinet of suffering that he has seen. And I have to imagine that you take a bit of that into yourself every single time. And I think that was kind of highlighted in the book too, where at a certain point people went, I need to talk to somebody. I need to say, it's okay. I need to get this off my chest.
You're absolutely right. Take a step back when you talk about running into a burning building. You're right. A lot of people may, in a moment with adrenaline, run into a burning building. That's being brave. It's brave when you're 9 years old and you've never been electrocuted before to stick a paper clip into a light socket. Like you're showing a little bit brave to do that, right? But once you've been bit, once you know the consequence, once you know that it hurts, you're not going to do it again. Well, if you're running into that burning building and it does hurt, trust me, it hurts. And the fear's there. And you see your buddy not make it back out. You're in a standoff and you see your buddy get shot because you're on the Baltimore County SWAT team like Tommy Worrell. And so once you see somebody get bit or you get bit, it takes courage to keep doing it. Once you know the consequence, but you continue to do it, that goes beyond bravery. That becomes courage. Then it's a conscious decision. And that's what they all have in common. And I make a little bit of that point in there, but I think it's really important. It's more than just running into the burning building. It's knowing what you're going to see when you get there. It's knowing what could happen to you while you're in there and saying, man, it has to be done. I can identify in a sense as an EOD tech in the sense of I knew what those bombs could do and I'd seen it happen to others. And it nearly happened to me until it did. But to do it for people that I know, I grew up with, in a building that I have an emotional attachment to, and an intersection I have to drive my kids through, it's just a completely different level. And each and every person in this book, I guess I'm humbled by, almost kind of disheartened by, but also it's a sense of hope. They found a way to deal with this on their own. I hate that they had to. I hate that there wasn't some major program and already figured out, multi-PhD person that can say, here's the 12 steps to getting through this. But it's just not true. And to think that the same guy, the same process in Dalton, Georgia and LAPD, like the same amount of trauma for these two people and finding their way to sanity and finding peace. I mean, I say in the book, they give up their peace for us to have this blissful ignorance of safety. I mean, they give up their own peace of mind.
I think that's what's cool about the way it's written and you being the author behind it all. And I know you would say, well, they're the author of their own story, but bringing these stories together from your perspective, because I think a lot of us look at you and go, this guy has seen things I will never see and has done things for me that I didn't deserve. And I watch you walk up with prosthetic legs and I know that you feel pain. And that's something I don't think people really know, that somebody in your situation, you feel pain every day. It is painful to walk in a prosthetic. It is painful to put that on. People, I know I've seen the comments on social media, and I thank you for always fighting back, because honestly, you fighting back has taught me so much about what your story is. And this now you are teaching me the story of the first responders on the ground here in the United States, which I think you've brought these veteran stories to me. You brought your own story to me in a way that has made it so much more real for me to understand what you guys go through every day. And I think it's beautiful to have you be the person to go, hey, let me bring these American home front heroes to the page as well.
Well, I hoped that there are 9 people in this book, and I think 5 or 6 of them I've known for more than a decade, some of them multiple decades. None of them are cold calls. They're all people I knew personally before I decided to write this book. And the reason why I wanted to have that fact in there was when I sat down and pitched the book to the publisher, they're like, oh, I know NYPD and, Oklahoma City. And there are these amazingly terrible things that have happened and amazing stories from them. But my point is, I can write just as impactful of a book with people from towns you've never heard of. That is the point, is that you don't have to be in New York or LA or in Oklahoma City when the building is bombed to understand this, or to have a first responder in your life that's gone through this. And I just hoped that I had enough credibility that they would share with me and be vulnerable with me, and the audience that I presented it to in the book would say, that last book was pretty good. Let me see this one. So that's my goal in this. Is I had this amazing enlightening experience over the last 4 or 5 years, since 2020, to go on these hunting trips, talk to my buddies, see a veteran that's a special operations bomb tech, talk to a hometown fireman, and see those two guys have more in common than I probably have in common with either one of them, and to see how they became vulnerable with each other and talked about these things, because if you don't talk about it, it just bottles up inside you. And they've learned, these first responders, probably more so than we have, because there isn't this national conversation where we feel heard. They don't have that. They've learned if they don't talk about it with each other and somebody, then they don't make it through it. And so it's been probably more rewarding for me than it will be for them to have their story heard and read. It's more rewarding for me to be the one to get to do it.
Stick around for more with Joey Jones, but first I want to talk to you about my partners at American Alternative. Markets are experiencing extreme volatility. They have these brief rallies and then they're erased by sharp sell-offs. And the dollar continues to weaken on the international markets, but gold has surged to all-time record highs. Wall Street analysts are warning of persistent market stress and advising their biggest clients to seek safety now. When the markets swing this violently, your retirement savings are extremely vulnerable, and it's during these uncertain times that people need stable assets. For thousands of years, that asset has been gold, and that's why I'm proud to endorse American Alternative Assets. They take a different approach to precious metals. They get to know you and your family, and they get to know your needs. They know precious metals protection isn't for everyone, and that's why they only work with the people that they know they can help. They provide quarterly check-ins to ensure your strategy stays on track, and 30% of their customers return and refer friends and family. American Alternative Assets is offering our listeners a free wealth protection guide and up to 5% bonus on your first purchase. So call right now. It's 877-522-GOLD, or you can visit tudorsgold.com right now. Again, that's 877-522-GOLD, or visit tudorsgold.com right now. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your wealth and secure your future today. Again, that's 877-522-GOLD, or visit tudorsgold.com. Now stay tuned. We'll be back right after this. What would be so cool is to have this in schools, to have high school kids read these stories and have to talk about them, because I think, to your point, it being a town I've never heard of is the town I live in. It's a town no one's ever heard of, so it is when I read these stories, these are stories of people in my town. I'm sure somebody could tell me the exact same thing. This has been how my life has been. And I would love to see as we kind of combat this, because like I said, the first responders here in Michigan will tell me every day, it has been so hard. Morale is down still. It has been so hard to get people to answer the call to serve, to get people to come to the fire department, to get people to join the police department. It has been such a challenge because there is this undercurrent of hatred, because the movements that these radicals push, they're powerful and they create long lasting effects if you can't beat them down. That's the beauty of this book, is that it does beat those stories down because it is real people, and you cannot help but fall in love with the people on these pages. And so I think it would be fantastic to get this into high schools, to talk to young people and say, look, these are the people that put everything in their life on the line to make sure you're safe. That sense that you have of, man, every place else in the world I can see danger, and right here I feel safe. And that was a powerful statement to me, that's not safe for them. They put themselves in danger every day. And I appreciate the fact that you wrote this and you brought these stories together. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. I think like it's on that idea of feeling safe, and I always use the analogy that when it comes to post-traumatic stress, like how you feel in a social environment when you come home from war, the way I say positive about it was like looking behind the curtain at the Wizard of Oz. Like, as long as you believe in the Wizard of Oz, anything can happen and things are awesome. But the moment you find out the wizard is just a man moving things around, things get real. It's like, oh, this is the real world. And so it's the same thing. Once you see a benign environment turn deadly, then every benign environment after that has the potential to be deadly. You've seen behind the curtain. It's one thing to be in this combative environment. That makes it hard for me to go into bars and concerts. It's another thing for the curtain that you live in front of to be sitting at a red light or walking into a 3-story building. And when the benign environment that you know can turn deadly becomes the restaurant you sit your family down to have dinner on Friday night, the amount of just pure faith, I guess. I don't know I don't know where they each get it individually, but this idea that I don't know that I'd ever leave the house with my kids anymore, and they still do, and they still have a full life. Now, some of them hit rock bottom during their career in a very suffering and silence way. When I say rock bottom, like they hit a place to where they can't find a smile and they can't find happiness, and they all crawl back out of it because that's just who they are. It's who we are as Americans. It's for everything negative in this book, it's also incredibly inspiring and uplifting. And my point in talking about what I went through in war, or writing Unbroken Bonds of Battle, or Behind the Badge, is so that every single person out there can read these stories and say, you know what, I can identify with. And I always, when I do a public speaking, I always say, and I think all the guys and the gal in this book would say the same, you look at me and you have this reverence, and I appreciate that. For me, it's because I got blown up. But I look back at the audience, and they look back at the people they serve, and it's like, look, you're going through cancer. You've lost everything you own. You went through a messy divorce. You've lost a child. Look how resilient and strong you are. Why wouldn't I be here for you? And they every single one of them believe in the people they serve, and they love the people they serve. And the people in this country are strong people, man.
Absolutely. All right. So we have to tell people where they get the book, because I really would encourage people not only to read it, but share these stories with your kids, because we have a curse that came into this country that we have to break. And that is this idea that these people, there's something that is nefarious about the people that go out to fight for us and save us every day. And like you said, they go to war every day. So it is Behind the Badge, answering the calls to serve on America's home front. Where can people get it?
Before June 17th, go to foxnewsbooks.com and pre-order. You'll probably get it on June 17th if you pre-order it. After June 17th, pretty much everywhere books are sold. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Amazon, foxnewsbooks.com. But if you're going to pre-order it, foxnewsbooks.com, and you'll probably get it before anybody.
And you'll love it. Go out and get it. Joey Jones, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining the Tudor Dixon Podcast for this episode and others. Go to iHeartRadio.com or go to iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can watch it on Rumble at Tudor Dixon. So join us next time on the Tudor Dixon Podcast, and have a blessed day.